Great days. Great days. I found a hero. I found someone I can respect. Someone who I know is not just cleverer than me, but smarter, wiser, kinder, more empathetic. I'm in love with Burkhard. Look at that man. Look at his story. German soldier, scientist, explosion, loses hands, sight, hearing. Didn't lose his humanity. Spent the rest of his life dictating to his mother and then his father, or the other way around, the theory of elemental particles, knowing that what he had in his head was so important that nothing else mattered. And when you see photographs of him when he's older, and there's a couple where he's in profile and he's looking quite austere, and there's one where he's looking straight at you, and I've never seen a kinder and more loving face. Because what he's saying, it's knowledge that matters, it's information that matters, and what you do with it. There's a description of res mass that was just given to me, and it's describing the three-body system. That's it, already in physics. The three-body system: Newton, Euler, Levy, is the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. It's a single bearing of 3 layers. Forget everything else, and we'll fit it back in at the end. The three-body system, a bearing. And it's a bearing, literally, it's a sphere made up of layers moving at different velocities, passing angular momentum between each one as a force, balancing, continually trying to balance angular momentum between each 2 layers, which are viscous between the 2. There's a Reynolds number between them that indicates the shearing properties of each of those layers, and so each of those layers has to shear a fraction, and then the angular momentum is passed from one layer to the next through this shearing mechanism until it reaches the edge of the three-body system, the bearing. This transfer of angular momentum between layers takes no time at all. It's infinite velocity. Nothing can get in the way of this force, it's so powerful. But even infinite velocity has constraints and dimensional bounds, and that we can explore them in the world of quantum. That the value of h is all you need to know, that it's the duration of time inside which all the action occurs. Any action which occurs faster than h seconds, which is variable, occurs in simultaneous time, all at the same time from our perspective, because it's going so fast. But with the physics that the technicians have achieved with that the engineers have built for them, the machinery, we can now observe it. And so the three-body system, you can see the transfer of force. The moon is the center, and it moves out to the layer where the Earth, where we exist, which is where all the action happens. This is the pure entropic boundary. Force is moving in this direction. The spheres are moving, rotating. When the expansive force meets the rotating matter, there is a deceleration in the rate of acceleration. So it continues to accelerate, but its rate of acceleration decelerates for this moment as it passes through this vial. And the vial is the important part, because the vial is the science of consciousness. The vial is what we experience. So now you can, if you can take this idea of the spheres, move yourself out to where the action is, the entropic boundary, the pure balance of stability between laminar and turbulent flow, critical velocity, again, variable. Here we have the vial, consciousness. And it's the action of an inversion of vector, complete rotation occurs in this duration of h seconds, instantaneous time now, this is the fastest part, this is where the real action is occurring. There's a little loop before it goes off again, and that loop creates the time in which we exist to experience it. So that because we are matter, this action of spiraling of nothing, of force, just pure force, does the cycle, it exists, the force exists as a complete entity, not as a passing entity. Neutrinos, I think these are. You're able to detect them. They're units of consciousness, which is why capturing in the ice cube facility is what's destroying our psyches. So, solar system. So there's consciousness been built for us, and we're receiving it, and it builds an actual structure, a membrane. So the base layer is the mycelium. The mycelium represents a boundary of consciousness. Below it, none. Above it, everything. And then it represents the vector change of the loop. Can you see it? Up, loop, and up. So the baseline, it goes where the mycelium is, and then above that is the us, our skin. So if we move our skin, our bodies higher, then the consciousness has risen higher through our actual elevation. So we stretched it. So if you're going to do that, you need to do that as well in order to get the pure benefit of receiving consciousness purely. Okay, so there's a little dabble of consciousness. So then we go out to the sun. So that the sun then represents the force, where the force is doing that again. This looping vector, it does it again. And it creates a hole in the bearing. So we've gone from the moon out to the earth, and now we're at the sun. So the outside, so the entire solar system, as you describe it, is a ball of fire that we're inside of. And then we see a hole, because the force has arrived there. A hole appears, an orifice, and a perfect jet, a carburetor jet, perfectly constructed hole. Can you picture it? Pi ratios. And the fire of c squared, which is the structure of light, the firmament if you call it, appears at that hole, and we see, a ball of fire. So what you're seeing is just a burst of flame. There's no mass to that. The mass is the solar system. It's just heat and visual experience. So we've seen the outside of the bearing now. Okay. So there's my three-body system. I've got moon in terms of spheres. I've got moon at center, earth further out, 6 times bigger, and then the sun 10 to 11, I think it is, meters. So now we need to invert it. You're looking at the sun, and you know it's inverted. You know you're actually seeing the jet of an enormous ball of fire inside which we exist. And so you've inverted that. So you invert everything on the way back. So there's the planets, but we'll do them later. Come back to the Earth and the Moon and what we're looking at. Light is created at the centre of the planet, and that's the beginning of the dot. You have a circle and a dot. So everything is built. Circle dot means equals consciousness. Start from the dot, build out. It's a dot of light. It moves out. Entropic boundaries. Hits a K value of 0, ice. So the centre of the planet is ice, a ball of ice. That ice has got light inside it. Remember the vector of force and the vector of rotation. So what happens is the light arrives at a place that's unexpected because of the various vectors. So that the moon image of the light, the white of the moon that we see, is that light being interacted with the forces and placing itself in the sky in that position. What we see as the surface of the moon is the surface of the underside of the fire above us. That's why it never moves. It's the underside of the fire. It's another boundary, so that the boundary of the solar system is, I picture it as ice and fire, that boundary repeating, of zero temperature to maximum temperature, repeating really close together. And so it's got craters and stuff on it, so because everything's in a mess, isn't it? So, but that's what we're seeing, right? So white moon, white light, firmament surface behind it. Because the spin of the bearing inside is east-west, that's how it's spinning, and it flashes with the instantaneous looping of the consciousness. It flashes, and so we see the sphere black and white because it's in a different position each time it flashes. It's like a film. Yeah. A car wheel, you think it's going one way, and you can make a car wheel be stationary on a film, can't you? If the speed is right, a car wheel, a spoke will suddenly go stationary. Just like that. It's going stationary and it's just moved slowly. So the phases of the moon are now created from this observation of the light, the distortion of the light in the sky. Gives us a cycle to live by. Earth now, a three-body system again, sorry. So ice, now we've got the moon as an entity of light existing in the sky that is our reference point. So that's our inertial frame of reference now. So take yourself to the stand on the Earth, look at the moon, and you can draw a belt around it. And there's a place in the center, the locus. Locus of forces is there. That's the center of the bearing. And how big that goes in terms of galaxies and stuff, forget it for the moment. Yeah? Three-body system. So the center of this system, which is a big ball of ice, fire, and an orifice so far, has been built into this point at the center, the locus. Now look at the delicacy of that locus. It doesn't exist. It's the centroid. If you look at structural engineering, you see that the center, the second moment of area, when you're calculating bending forces as an engineer, the second moment of area has a centroid. The units are meter 4, and there's a centroid. So that in this system, the meter 4 is the centroid. The centroid is the sphere. That's what we're describing. It's possible to have a shape that exists with a centroid that exists outside the mass. This is all engineering. And that centroid is what we're seeing now at the locus here between the Earth and the Moon. Go to the Sun and look at the eccentricity now of the Sun. From my memory, it's 0.0167. Excuse me. It's 0.0167. No units. It's just an eccentricity at the orbit of the Earth and the Sun as we measure it. It's a slightly elliptical, so they get away with it's elliptical. It's not a perfect circle. 0.0167 eccentricity. Take that eccentricity and place it now at the locus. And here's our three-body system. Can you see it? It's a hammerhead at the moment. Yeah, we've got a Earth, Moon, Sun. It's a T with a center point there. The eccentricity of the Sun is a drag factor on that locus, isn't it? Think about the balance. This system now, as I've described to you, is the bearing. We're seeing the center of the bearing transferred to a place where nothing is existing. And this is how you can pass an axis at the same place. You can have as many axes as you want passing through that point because it doesn't exist. It only exists as a triangulation of forces, expansion and rotation. So there's an explanation for the law of center of mass from Newton. Okay, moved to Euler's rigid body axis theorem, showing that displacement equals one rotation. How is that possible? Because this is the bearing. There's nothing there. So that can move totally freely. And it does. It spins at a velocity. But it's still got bounds, so it spins at a velocity c. It's as fast as it can go. And so now you can see a relationship now suddenly building between, I'm saying, these values of critical speed, c, and h, critical duration. Those two are balanced. They have a factor between the two. One is equaling the other. Speed of c, speed of light, affects the duration of h. Longer duration, slower c. They should be equal. Forget the decimal places. Yeah. C should be measured as reflected speed of light. Should be measured as c pi. H should be 2 pi. So the last final factor now is gravity. Let's fit gravity in there. Here's our hammerhead, locus, 0.0167 eccentricity, dragging on that. Go there. And draw the 0.0167 as a cross. So we've got a cross. Now, stand it up. Hammerhead. Tiny little bit on the top, cross, but that is the greatest mass moment. That's the conscious mass moment that we experience. You remember I told you at the beginning about the loop? That loop exists there. And it's I. Small I. A line and a dot. Yeah? And what you're seeing there in the I and the dot is you. The gap. Because what it shows is that there's a straight line and a circle. Always exists. And they have a balance between the two because there's a gap. And that gap represents the loop of consciousness that we experience. So by looking at the positive moment that creates all this in the first place, the balance of the bearing is created by the positive moment as described by Levy. The motion that exists when everything is stationary has been found, and that motion is what we create. So the positive moment is life. You simply, and I mean simply, choose from this moment forward that every decision and choice that you make be positive. The first one you make is to be positive that you're being lied to. The second to be positive about is to be positive that you are smart enough to know when someone is bullshitting you. And you are. But you've missed a piece of information that's been stolen from you, from your mind. You've been made to forget what I've just told you because you already knew it. So be positive that you already knew this and just go back and revisit the information until you're satisfied that it is correct. And then choose your own positive steps towards fixing the bearing. Because if we're going to build a spaceship for the future and a reality that's fit to suit the gods that we are in this reality, and we have to learn to deal with that, then we need a planet that reflects our glory, because our glory is the glory of God. Rest, mass. It's the balance between elasticity and plasticity. Capital E, capital I. Balanced. By what? By your positive behavior. Hello, my species. I've missed you. Let's go. Welcome to New Earth.